Good morning, world history. Day 8, digital learning. Hope you're having a great day. Today we're looking at Unit 4.2, which is Feudalism in the Middle Ages. And I wanted to give you just a reminder of where we were yesterday as we talked about Charlemagne having come into power. And as he came into power, 800 AD, Christmas Day. And there were several things that Charlemagne does. He puts all of Europe basically on the same currency, so trade is easier. The continent is prospering. You've got everybody participating, whether you're a peasant, you're a noble. Everybody has the opportunity to be a part of society. You've got education reform. You've got religion, as we've already discussed, coming on board, seeking to unify all of Europe under the Christian faith. So he does a lot and is really bringing about this sense of unity and a strong central government. But then he dies, and when he dies, this will become the end of a strong central government. The empire is basically going to be split up between Charlemagne's heirs, and all three of them, of course, as we have seen throughout history, they are going to become jealous and upset with one another, and they're going to fight for basic control of the empire. And so you're basically going to see the civil war takes place, and it's not until the brothers sign what's known as the Treaty of Verdun, which divides the empire, into three kingdoms. And basically you'll have the kingdom of Lothair, which is right here in the center. You have the East Frankish kingdom, and then you'll have the West Frankish kingdom. But the lack of strong rulers is going to lead to a new system of governing, and land holding, and what's going to be known as feudalism. Well, a variety of people from about 700 to 1200 are going to come in and going to cause basically this Carolingian dynasty to be destroyed. The first group of people I want to talk to you about are known as the Vikings. The Vikings are seafaring people, which meant that the majority of them came in through water. They had these long boats that were wide and flat, and they were able to move quickly across water. And not only were they able to move quickly across large bodies of water, but they could also go down rivers and streams. So if you were living in a village that was on the coast, you were vulnerable, but also if you were just on the river, off the waterway, you could still be subject to invasion from the Vikings. You might remember Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson and the Vikings will reach the New World. They will found what is known as Newfoundland, which is modern-day Canada. And the Vikings are known for coming in and pretty much plundering and pillaging their way through various areas, taking all the gold and the jewelry and the money, and they are terrorist, if for lack of a better word. So the Vikings invade from the north. While they're invading from the north, you're also going to have this group of people that are known as Magyars, and they're going to come from the east, from places that we would know as today being Hungary and Romania. These are mercenaries who will invade southern Europe. And they come in through horseback. They're excellent horsemen, and they are interested in taking over the places that we know of today, such as France and Italy. And just like the Vikings, very dominant as far as taking what they want, no prisoners being needed. And they will completely destroy the economic and political system. And then the final group that we hear that kind of come in during this period after Charlemagne dies are the Muslims, and they will come from the south. Maybe you've heard of the Visigoths. The Visigoths were in North Africa, and the Muslims will push up from North Africa, and they will make their way into the southern part of Europe. The southern part of Europe being today what's known as modern-day Spain, as well as Portugal. These Muslims that make their way into Spain will be called the Moors, Moors. The reason I mentioned that they're called the Moors is in Miss Sanders' class, when you're reading various works by Shakespeare, especially Othello, you hear about the Moors, and so that is talking about this group of Muslims during that particular time. So what do we have? Well, we've got Vikings invading from the north, Magyars invading from the east, Muslims attacking from the south. So you have invasions coming from every single direction. And there's nobody who can bring peace and stability. I mean, you have Charlemagne, who has passed away, who was a solid leader, but his heirs were nothing like Dad, and they are incompetent. They are unable to basically do anything except fight each other. And so people don't trust any longer. And they used to be able to trust the king, but now they can't trust the king. So what they're going to start doing is looking for local leaders who are going to protect them. And as they start looking for these local leaders, they recognize that if you can find someone who can take care of a smaller area of land, then maybe you had a chance against these enemies that were coming from what seemed like every particular direction. So we start establishing what would be known as fortresses, and nobles are willing to give up some of their land for loyalty and for military aid, and this is going to begin a system that is known as feudalism. It is extremely important you understand what feudalism is and what it came about to do. Remember, there are terrorizing groups coming from the north, from the south, and from the east. There is no central control, and there is nobody there to protect them. And so these individuals are worried, they are scared. And so we start to see this system that comes about in which a king would give land to a low-level lord, and he would give them that land in a promise of loyalty. So in other words, I'm going to give you some land, and by giving you this land, I expect you to give me military service, to take care of the land, and to protect the land. Now, there's no money system at this time, so the most important thing that people have is land. It's the only thing that you can basically offer. So if you look right here, what happens is the king will give to the lord, and another word for lord would be vassal. And so the king is going to give to the lord land. And the name of this land is called a fief, okay? F-I-E-F. So the king gives a fief to the lords or the vassals, and in exchange, what the vassals give to the king, as you can see from my chart here, they will give loyalty to the king, and they'll give military aid to the king. So if you want fief, you have to give loyalty, and you have to give military aid. Now, we also, as we start to see this, you need someone who's going to protect the land from other people, from other areas. So we have what's known as a knight. And the knight is basically responsible for taking care of the land, protecting the land, being aware of enemies that might want the land. So these knights come in, they would begin training at the age of 7. Their goal would be to protect the fief or to protect the land as it is. And then finally down here at the bottom, if I scroll down, you'll see that we have the peasants or what's known as the serfs. These are the individuals that were responsible for farming the land. Now, just something interesting to understand when it comes to these peasants and serfs, that they're responsible for farming the land, but they're actually property also of the land. So they are part of that land. They're part of that territory. They're not slaves because they have freedom where they can work their own land. They can buy their own land. But in a sense, they're property that comes with the fief or comes with the particular land. They're at the bottom of the pyramid. And what they would do is they would work the land. So the peasants work the land so that they can get food, shelter, and protection. The knights, what they do is they provide military service so that they can get food, shelter, and protection. And then the lords, they basically promise loyalty, military aid to the king in so that they can get land. So this is the aspect of feudalism and how feudalism would basically work. Within this, we have basically three groups of classes. Of course, you have your king, but after your king, you have those who would fight. That would be your nobles, it would be your knights. And then the second group, of course, would be those who prayed. These would be the men and the women of the church. And then the final group would be those that would work, and that's the peasants. The majority of people that lived in this area during this time, they were peasants. They were serfs. They weren't slaves. They couldn't be bought or sold, but basically their job was you work that particular land. That's your area to serve. One final thing we need to talk about today is manners, or the manneralism system. Now, this is different than feudalism. Remember, feudalism is a political and a legal system. The manner system was the economics of it. The manor system dealt with money, it dealt with jobs, how people supported themselves within the particular territories. So feudalism's the big picture, manners is what goes on inside of that big picture. And in a manor system, basically, you would have a manor. You would have a castle, for instance. Notice, this is the Lord's castle. Remember, he is given the land by the king for military aid and for loyalty. So he established a very nice castle here. He's got gates that are around it. But then we have houses for the serfs, for the peasants. This is where they would live. You would also have a church that was here, a church that would provide services. You would have a bakery. Notice here's a mill. And so this pretty much makes up the manor system. Now, the manor system can't depend on trade. It can't depend on interacting with other manors because at the time, trade was reduced. There were no roads, and basically you can't trust other manors. You don't want to rely on anyone else, so you have to grow your own food. And the way that they would grow their own food is that they would have what would be known as a three-field system. They would rotate. For instance, this one would be spring planting. This would be fall planting. But over here, notice it's called a fallow field. Fallow field basically means you leave it alone. So you leave it alone so that you can grow nutrients. You can allow the field to have time to restore itself before you farm again. So notice in this medieval manner, you would be planting here in the fall. You would plant here in the spring. You would leave this one alone, no planting. And then the next year, this would become a fall field. This would become a fallow field, and this would be a spring field. Notice you can still see your churches and your homes and your villages, your bakery, your blacksmith, and of course where the Lord would reign. So just a little understanding of the feudal system and the manor system. Make sure you do not see the feudalism and manor as the same thing. They are different. Feudalism's the big picture. Manors, the economic piece to feudalism. Hopefully this helps, gives you a little understanding of kind of what was going on during this particular time period. This will basically set the stage for the way that life will spread out throughout Europe as we move forward. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.